All right, and welcome everybody to another episode of Infinite Sports. That's right, 2 straight weeks we're recording a show for you guys. So we're sticking to it, sticking to our plan. So far, so good. A little bit of a different topic today. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and I am joined once again by Ben Upson. Now, last week we did a little football. Today is going to be a baseball theme show. And if you're watching this or listening to this, you probably know what it is because we're huge Yankee fans. We're here to discuss Juan Soto and Juan Soto signing with the New York Mets. But before we get into that, Ben, how are we doing today?
Better, Kenny. Better than what it's been like the last few days trying to digest this bitter news of, one of our best players perhaps to ever don the pinstripes going across the city to the other borough of the team that we now probably dislike a little more.
Yeah, I understand that. Um, I guess we'll get right into it. So obviously, this is something that was the talk of the offseason, and it was really going to be what gets the ball rolling for the remaining free agents. I know there were some deals that were made prior to Juan Soto signing with the Mets, but this is really what's going to get the ball rolling. And we are friends with Met fans. We got family that are Met fans, and we're all just waiting for a decision. And we heard so many different things from different reporters and all this stuff. We're just like, let's just end this. So when we got to the weekend and you started hearing that a decision was going to come before Monday, we're like, okay, let's get this over with. And I actually was charging my phone when he signed. So when I was watching the Sunday night game, the Chiefs and the Chargers, my sister was the one that broke the news because she was looking at her phone and she saw that Soto signed with the Mets. So then I ran to get my phone and I see my text or your text to me pop up on my phone and I knew. I was like, yep, that's it. Because a couple days ago, she texted me saying, "Did Soto sign?" Because she saw something that said that Soto supposedly signed with the A's. And I'm like, "Where did you see that?" And she said, "Facebook." I'm like, "Yeah." And you really believe that? Come on. So I knew right there it was true. And then you saw all the texts in the group chats. And yeah, it was made official. Juan Soto signed a, just to get this right, 15 years, $765 million, which is the largest contract in sports history, I believe. Um, and there's an opt out in it where if the Mets, opt in and he doesn't opt out, this is after the 2029 season, they can negate the opt out by increasing the annual salary by $4 million a year to bring it to a total of $805 million. So I know that there's been a lot of complaints from Yankee fans that, oh, he only took $5 million more because the Yankees added an extra year and it was 760. So it was 15 years for 760. But technically, without the opt out, if the Mets negate the opt out, he ends up getting more than just $5 million. And there's a huge signing bonus in there as well. So, yeah, that's a lot of money. Now, how do I feel? It's upsetting. It definitely is upsetting. There was never really a point where I thought that we're definitely going to bring him back because I knew it was going to be very competitive because you have the Mets, the Red Sox were in on him. I never really thought the Dodgers were going to get him. I mean, obviously the Dodgers are going to be involved in everything because look at the roster that they're building. But I thought it was ultimately going to come down to the Yankees or the Mets. And if you were to have asked me early in the 2024 season when the Mets were struggling, what are the chances he goes to the Mets? I mean, I think they would be lower just because the Mets were not playing well. I mean, I was watching like the first few games of the season, and I'm like, this team looks like a disaster. But then once they started playing better, and they had like the best record in baseball since whatever it was June 21st, and they made it all the way to the NLCS, that became a very attractive destination. And even if the Mets didn't put together a good season, they still had the money, you know. And Steve Cohen is the owner, and he was going to outbid everybody for this guy, and that's ultimately what he did. And I'm not surprised because he's got the money. And you know what I was surprised about? How far the Yankees went. Because I thought the Yankees would have maybe got up to like 600 million, maybe. Did not think they were going to go 700. I did not expect that. So you can't really fault Brian Cashman and Hal Steinbrenner. They did the best they could. It's just ultimately it came down to money. I know there's some other things we'll get into that maybe could have led to Soto leaving and going to the Mets, but the main thing was money. That's what it came down to. And we live in a world now where the Mets can outspend the Yankees. And that's something that has not been the case. Um, when the Yankees were winning all those championships in the 90s and you go through the 2000s, before Steve Cohen, the Mets, that wasn't the case. But it's a new era now. And they will be introducing him today. The press conference, I think, is at 3 o'clock. So I actually do want to tune in just to see, how that all goes. But yeah, no, it's just unfortunate. There's more things that I want to say, but obviously I don't want to keep talking because I want Ben to give his opinion on the matter. I always poke fun at how much he likes to babble, but I'm talking like crazy right now. So I'm going to give you a chance to chime in here. And what was your initial reaction to Soto signing with the Mets?
Well, just to proceed that, Kenny, I think we all babble, especially when it's something that's close to us and something we're all passionate about. And let's just say over the course of the last 4 days, I've been pretty passionate about this. I've been going through every stage of every emotion practically. See, I, like you, was watching the pretty exhilarating Chiefs Chargers Sunday night football game. And all of a sudden, right during like the early stages of the third quarter, all you see is the notification on your phone. And it's all I see is Juan Soto, Mets, 15 years, 765 million. And I just felt my entire body go numb. I literally lost all feeling because I think it was a little bit inevitable that we knew this was going to happen. I don't think there was ever a doubt in my mind that Soto wasn't going to, sign with the Yankees. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I had that doubt in my mind the entire time. I had said that he was going to be a Met back at the end of the season, and it ends up being right. It felt like the situation was too good to be true. And as you just alluded to, we are in an era in baseball where the Mets have one of the richest owners, if not the richest owner in the sport right now, Steve Cohen. And he was going to open up his wallet and tap out every single dollar that he had in it, which obviously he didn't have 765 million in his wallet, but he went to the bank account and just took it all out. That's all I can say. This is where we are. Steve Cohen has the mindset that the Mets are in a fantastic position to win now from an offensive standpoint. Now that you have Soto with Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, hopefully Pete Alonso returns to the Mets for their sake. Granted, don't have the most stellar rotation right now. It's definitely got
Yeah,
some
that definitely still needs some work.
That's the area the Mets really do need the work. But Steve Cohen believes in this team, and he has since he bought the team just a few years ago. And he knows the value that Juan Soto is in the sport of baseball. He's a top 5 player, maybe even a top 3 if you'll go that far. But it's really not much of a surprise to me in the end. It's very disheartening though, like to say the least. I'm happy that Hal Steinbrenner actually took it to 16 years, $760 million as his offer. I mean, if you're thinking grand scheme of things, maybe this won't be so bad after all. Because, I mean, the Mets literally just basically signed Juan Soto for the entirety of, the rest of his career in Major League Baseball. From a business perspective, putting this much stock in one player it's a little risky, but I mean, Soto is that talent and he is that guy. But if you think of the absurdity of this contract, it's just unbelievable that Soto's going to end up walking out with over 800 million come 2039 after signing bonuses and everything. 2039. I don't even want to know where I'm going to be in 2039 right
Hopefully we have full-time jobs.
well, that's a good start. Let's hope for that.
I think by then we will.
But I will say when I first, heard this news and got the initial reactions, I was really frustrated in some ways. And look, I understand that, some Yankee fans are obviously, totally like in cahoots.
Yeah, and I have strong things to say about some of these Yankee fans that I see on social media.
Yeah. And while I'm not to their level, I mean, the first 24 hours was the anger phase of letting it all out. And I was just like, so while Soto was all about the money, screw him. We don't need him. He was never a Yankee. This is ridiculous. It was the first, you got to let it sit for a while. And now, as the Yankees have moved on throughout this week and signed Max Fried to that 8-year, $218 million deal, getting another big arm for the starting rotation that they needed. I mean, now it starts to feel a little less painful. And something that's going to be really interesting to monitor is the Yankees are still linked to Pete Alonso. If Pete Alonso somehow ends up coming to the Bronx as a New York Yankee, then it's going to get very interesting, the dynamic between Yankees and Mets fans, because all the,
I don't think Met fans are going to care.
Well, I wouldn't say that. See, the lunacy of the Yankee fans, everyone's going to be like, yeah, we took Alonso. Who needs Juan Soto?
Well, I see Yankee fans doing that, but honestly, I think for some Met fans, they're going to be like, you can have him. Like, they got Juan Soto, who's one of the best players in the sport.
Oh, they did. They did. They won the lottery. I mean,
it's not the same. I mean, listen, at the right price, maybe I would take Alonso, but the problem is for me, I don't think he's a good fit because I think you're going back to how they were when we used to do the radio show. How many times would we would do our show and I would say the Yankees don't have balance in their lineup? If you're bringing in Pete Alonso, and it's kind of the same thing with Christian Walker, although you'd probably get him cheaper, you'd probably get him on a 2-3 year deal. Then we'd be going back to more right-handed hitters, and that's why bringing Soto was great because yeah, of course he's a generational talent, but also he's a left-handed hitter, and that is something that the Yankees were lacking for years, and they finally corrected that. And if you go out and sign Alonso, like I'm not going to be opposed to it, but again, you're going back to how it was, in 2023, 2021 especially, with right-handed power hitters. We don't need that. We need lefties. And that's why I just don't think it, and also it would be on a big contract too. So I'm not necessarily all for signing Alonso. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I think it wouldn't be a good fit.
I certainly think Christian Walker is another viable candidate that, the Yankees have been linked to, the first baseman from the Arizona Diamondbacks, and we'll see where that goes. But, as I was saying, though, Kenny, about how this might not just be so bad, the Mets have thrown everything at Juan Soto, and now he's at least what it should be based off this deal. The Mets are saying that you're our next great franchise player for the next 15 years. That's what it's going to be. The Yankees now have opened the door with Soto leaving to bring in more pieces beyond Max Fried. As we just mentioned, the Christian Walkers, the Pete Alonsos, Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman have all been linked to the Yankees here in this process. I mean, and I highly doubt it's going to happen now with Fried, but Corbin Burns is still out there too. Somebody's grabbing him, probably not the Yankees.
No, it's not going to be the Yankees.
But this free agent landscape is quite something. And now Hal and the Yankees front office have said that, they're going to go out and spend now this offseason because, I mean, let's be real. The Yankees are always World Series or bust. We know that. And the pressure that's always on this franchise to compete every year is unlike any other organization in not just baseball, but all of sports. And so the fact that the Yankees now have this opportunity to fill some more spots on this roster instead of, allotting the entire offseason budget or most of the offseason budget to just one superstar player. And granted, again, we've been saying it since the start here that Soto is a top player in baseball. There's no doubt about that. But maybe long term, if you look at this, anytime you give a player such a huge deal like this, I mean, look at Max Fried. The Yankees just signed Max Fried to that 8-year deal that I was mentioning. He's 30 years old. He's had some elbow issues. How do we know who Max Fried's going to be at 38? How do we know what Juan Soto is going to be when he's 38? Granted, he's only 26 and he is just getting into the prime of his career. But the Mets were obviously willing to throw the house and take the risk to go get him for every dollar that Steve Cohen had. So it's a dynamic shift in the city of New York for sure. I mean, this is going to be like we thought Jose Altuve got a lot of boos for the whole incident with the Astros about don't rip my shirt off. I mean, you might want to circle your calendars now because May 16th to the 18th at Yankee Stadium, I believe the Subway Series opens this year. It's at Yankee Stadium. Those are going to be some of the loudest boos that you might hear when Juan Soto steps to the plate. And granted, hopefully the crowd is civil enough
No, they're not going to be.
Well, I hope they'd be civil enough for a tribute video before the game or something. But you know how
I mean, he only got yeah. I mean, he was very impactful in the 1 year. But I mean, well, listen, they gave Aaron Hicks a tribute video. So yeah, I mean, you never know.
I mean, and Soto kind of did have the homer that sent the Yankees to the World
Yeah,
Series.
no, you're right. You're right. Yeah, they're gonna have something. Yeah,
they're gonna cook something up. But either way, this May in the Bronx,
you might see people throwing stuff at the jumbotron though.
It's gonna get ugly. It's gonna get really ugly.
Yeah, no. When they showered him with love, when he would run out to right field, yeah, it's not gonna be like that next year.
They might as well just have a movie crew there and call it A Bronx Tale 2 coming to theaters May 2025 because this is where we are.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely want to go to those games because it adds more juice, it adds more flavor to this Subway Series now. But there's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to get to because you got all these people on social media trying to, start these narratives of, oh, he didn't want to live in the shadow of Aaron Judge, and I just think it's silly. Like Juan Soto before he came to the Yankees, he was an all-star. He's won a World Series. I don't think he cares about that. And the other thing too is, oh, he's a traitor. He just went for the money, which yeah, he did go for the money, but he didn't know the Yankees anything. It's not like he was a Yankee that came through the farm system. He spent 1 year here. He got traded here. He doesn't know the Yankees anything. And he never, if you watch pretty much all of his interviews when they asked him, about the fans, chanting re-sign Soto, and even after the World Series, he never gave you one indication that he was going to stay. It was always ask Hal, ask Cashman. And then after they lost the World Series, literally when they lost the World Series, he said 30 teams got a chance to sign me and compete to sign me. So, it's just I think people were blinded. I think people just thought, oh, he's going to re-sign with us. He's had a great year. The fans love him. Why is he going to want to leave? Well, I always thought, yeah, there's a possibility he's going to leave. I always kept saying, I'm going to enjoy this year as much as I can because I know there's a strong possibility that he's not going to come back. And sure enough, that's what happened. I'll tell you this, and this is surprising. When the Yankees lost Robinson Cano to the Seattle Mariners, I was more devastated about that than I was about this. Now, maybe it's because I knew that Soto was going to leave. Now, obviously, Juan Soto is a better player than Cano, but Robinson Cano came up through the Yankee system. He was there for a long time, won a World Series with the Yankees. And I thought when the core four was on their way out, I thought Cano was going to be that franchise guy. And then when he signed with the Mariners, and the other thing too is he signed that deal with Jay-Z's company, Rock Nation. So I thought, oh, well, Jay-Z's a New York guy. He's going to want to make sure Cano stays with the Yankees, right? You would think. But no, he signs out west, goes to Seattle, and I was devastated. That, I think, impacted me more because of the fact that I thought Cano would have stayed with the Yankees as opposed to Soto. I had a feeling that, yeah, like we had a great chance to bring him back, but there was also a possibility that he was going to go elsewhere because, you know, now we got the Mets to deal with and they took him. And yeah, it's just that's how it ended up going. But I think Yankee fans, some of them were just blinded. They just thought, like, oh, yeah, he's going to stay. Why would he want to go to the Mets? There's no chance he's going to go to the Mets. Well, Mets got money now to play with. That's something that we didn't have to deal with in the past. And then also some other stuff too. I know there was talk about how Yankee security handled his family and his I think his chef and his driver. There were some situations there, and maybe that was part of the reason why Soto left, and also that the Mets offered Soto a suite. Now I think we talked about this before we started the show here, but I think the suite stuff. Now, Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter, they paid for their own suites. So I don't blame the Yankees one bit for saying, no, we're not going to give you your own suite. If Aaron Judge is paying for his suite, if Derek Jeter was paying for his suite, you got to pay for your own suite. So I don't have a problem with that. Now, in terms of how his family was handled, yeah, I mean, you'd have liked to have seen or heard that things would have been better. Because we do have an inside source. One of our friends works at Yankee Stadium and saw, I guess, some of these situations kind of unfold at times. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a reason why he left. He left because you know the Mets offered him the most money. That's what it came down to. That is what it was always going to come down to. And the Michael K show is ending on Friday, and that's a show that we both watch. Michael K throughout the whole year said he's going to go to the team that offers him the most money. It's not going to be. We could shower him with love all we want. Ultimately, it's going to come down to what you offer him. And the Mets offered him more money, and yeah, I guess a couple of other things, the suite, but it came down to money. And it was no, oh, he didn't want to be in the shadow of Aaron Judge, all these different narratives. It came down to the top dollar. He always wanted the top dollar. He didn't really, I guess it really didn't mean that much to him that he could be out in Monument Park. He can have a plaque of his, the pinstripes. For some players, it just doesn't, resonate with them. I guess he just didn't really factor that in. He wanted top dollar, he got it, and you can't really be mad about it. And for some people to say they'd rather him sign with the Red Sox, well, I'm sorry, Ben. How many times do we play the Mets each year? How many times?
It's 4 now, maybe 6.
No, but I'm saying like I know like those are the individual games, but twice a year, right?
Oh yeah, 2 series.
Yeah, yeah. So now I'm happy it's going back to 2 3-game sets. That's how it should be. Because there were years where you had the 40-game set, which is 2 at Yankee Stadium and 2 at Citi Field. Now it should be 3 games at Yankee Stadium, 3 games at Citi Field. That's how it should be. And that's what it's going back to. And I'm happy about that. That's how it should be. But, now because things have changed where you have every team is playing everybody. So now the divisional games, like it went from 19, now it's down to 13. So if he went to the Red Sox, we'd be playing him 13 times and in our own division. Are you kidding me? Yeah, as much as yeah.
I can't believe that people were arguing that. I saw that narrative going around too, like, oh, it'd be better off if he was just a Red Sox. It's like they're a division rival. New York and Boston have been bitter rivals for decades. Especially,
the rivalry's dead right now, but yeah.
Well, yes, at this current state of what we're in, yes, it is dead. But I mean, if Juan Soto becomes a Red Sox, who's not to say the Red Sox, have, or at least it appears they're trying to make some moves in this offseason. They just got Garrett Crochet from the White Sox. Maybe Corbin Burns lands there, because goodness knows they need some pitching too right now, badly. I mean, and if they just got Juan Soto going to the Red Sox would be miles worse than the Mets. It would. I mean, like the anger that I felt in those first 24 hours, if he was going to Boston, I would have heard it from everybody. And that would have just there would have been a flame coming out of the top of my head from all the anger if that was the case, because Juan Soto going to your division rival who you play 13 times a year, and New York versus Boston, which all the New York fans are like, oh, title town, screw Boston. And then all the Boston fans look at New York as the little brother because, well, we are, because New York can't win a championship to save their lives right now. And it's just the rivalry actually would have probably increased once again if Soto went to the Red Sox. But anyways, he's not in Boston. He's with the Mets. The Yankees and the Mets don't play each other for anything significant outside of the two Subway Series matchups all year.
Unless,
unless, and I'll tell you one thing, maybe there's something going on because Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, 2000 was how many years ago from next year? 25?
yeah,
Perhaps?
quarter of a century.
25th anniversary, Mets Yankees Subway Series. Something going on.
The script writers, they're already
look, I'm not
they're
going
already
to
cooking it up.
I'm not going to say something's going on, but like the stars are aligning here for, a rejuvenated, city, bringing life back to the city in this Subway Series if it happens. But we said that this year too, and look what happened.
Yeah,
we were close, but not quite.
I also just think that there's just some fans that are so soft. He signs with the Mets and they're like, oh, well, he's not a good fielder. He's not a good base runner. The Mets are not going to win anything.
I heard that. I was listening because I drive home late nights because I work late nights. I'm listening to the overnight show the night that this goes down on the Fan, and people are just calling up saying, oh, whatever. Juan Soto's not a great player. He's never been a good base runner. It's like, why should we care? Why should we care that he's a Met? The Mets can deal with all these problems. And the host, of course, is Chris McMonagle on Sunday nights. And he's just completely going off on these callers after they hang up. Like, I have to agree with him. Who cares about Juan Soto's base running? Doesn't matter. The guy has one of the best on-base percentages in all of baseball. He has incredulous plate discipline. I mean, he is one of the best disciplines you'll ever see. The Soto shuffle is his signature thing. And the fact that people are calling up complaining about these little fundamental things, it's like fundamentals have gone out the window in baseball now. It's all about power hitting and, just trying to, get runs home across the plate. Steals, walks, all that. I mean, everything's kind of taken a back seat in some ways in baseball now, especially steals. There were guys that used to have, 100 steals in a season. Now we're lucky if the top, stealer like Ohtani last year had like 50 something, I think it was.
And Acuna had the stolen base season too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, who cares about these little ticky-tack things?
Met fans don't care.
No, they don't. Why would they care? They should be. If I was a Met fan, I would be over the moon right now, and then some, because this is one of the best hitters in baseball. This is one of the best, on base players in baseball. He just brings so much to the table in so many different ways. Like, and I have to agree. I think the whole narrative about Soto being behind Judge is definitely a little pushed. I'm curious to see if that thought ever crossed his mind. But I'd have to agree with you because let's be real, he's with Scott Boras. Scott Boras for decades in this league has been pushing some of the best top players in baseball to get the most money they can get. And this is Scott Boras's, golden goose case right here.
Yeah, because especially after last year, he struck out.
Oh yeah. And, look, obviously the other ones that come to your mind, you had the Bryce Harper deal, which was what, I think like 13 for north of 300 million. He was part of the Cano deal that you mentioned. And Cano, can you believe that too, looking back at that deal? 10 years, $240 million. How well did that pan out?
Yeah.
Not great after about the first 3 years. And this is why, like, even with the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani, like Shohei Ohtani just put up one of the greatest seasons in baseball. He did. But again, it's a calculated risk because obviously what these owners and what these teams see is like, well, whatever. We don't care about the years. We don't care about the money. We're just, going to get this guy and see if he can produce for us. Like, Juan Soto's on this 15-year deal. I think realistically, the Mets are just hoping for at least 5 incredible years, 5 great years, and then 5 mediocre years as he ages at the end of his contract. That's probably what these teams think about. They probably think about it in segments. It's like, well, we don't care. We're going to get our lifetime player. If he does great, he does great. We just want to win some championships. And on the back 9, down the road, like,
yeah, you'll deal with it.
Don't know. So that's the thing. It's all calculated risks at the end of it. But at the same time, it's the money that Juan Soto deserves. I mean, did he get a little overpaid? Yeah.
I mean, look at these contracts. I mean, anything's an overpay. Ohtani's overpaid.
Ohtani's totally overpaid. Like when I first saw that 10 years, $700 million, and granted, the guy hasn't even touched the mound yet, which this is going to be insane to think about.
It's coming
this
up.
Is why it's another thing. It's like Ohtani hasn't been able to consistently balance pitching and hitting because he's had these injuries. And I don't know. I mean, look, money just runs wild in sports today. It does.
Especially baseball.
Oh, absolutely. Baseball contracts are getting more and more lucrative by the year. And it's not even close. I mean, so obviously, you know, all these crazy Yankee fans out there, which, by the way, I know we're Yankee fans, but we're not the lunatics that run wild every day in this country, because there are lunatics.
That's why I made sure to call them out today if they ever see this.
I'll tell you one thing. It's not a great comparison, but you remember Bottlegate in Cleveland in the 2000s? We might get something close to that if something goes down with Soto when he comes back to Yankee Stadium. Like, if Soto, imagine Soto hits like a leadoff homer in the first inning. Like, and immediately
he'll probably be batting second or third.
The ball's going to go right back on the field. And then there's going to be a chorus of boos, and then stuff's going to be raining down on him at home plate. And then the police are going to have to come out on the field, and it's just going to be a mess. I can see it already because I know what this fan base is like. There are some people in this fan base.
Remember that year they were throwing stuff on the field against the Guardians?
Oh, yeah. I know. It was a joke. It's a joke.
Even in the World Series, the guy's trying to rip the ball out of Mookie Betts' glove.
Yeah, and then remember last season in 2023, you know, everybody had the Fire Cashman night in September, you know, all because
that worked out well.
Yeah. Cashman's going nowhere, guys. Neither's Boone. We're going into the same circle once again for another year. This is where we are. Aaron Boone got this team to a World Series. You think Brian Cashman's just going to turn his back and, you know, say, all right, goodbye. We don't want you.
No. I think Boone did a good job this year, although there were some questionable decisions in the playoffs that we'll get into. But I thought Boone did a good job. I don't think Boone should be let go at this current moment. No. I thought if the year to do it was last year before they got Soto, when they had their worst year in 20 years, 20 plus years.
Right, and they proved, Boone proved this season that, you know, he's done enough to, you know, stick around at least a little longer, you know, as manager of this team. And I mean, look, there's no doubt the Yankees are still going to have plenty of talent on this roster. That's the thing that people are forgetting too. Everyone acts like, and again, it was heat of the moment. This is what sports fans are like. This is what we all are. We're all heat of the moment. Like in the first 24 hours, it's like, it felt like a funeral. Like, oh my God, Soto's gone. Oh, the whole season, just forget 2025. It's all over. Soto's gone. It's like, yeah, it's like, if you really step back and think about it, it's gonna be all right. The Yankees still have plenty of guys on this roster that are capable of, you know, I mean, would I say instant World Series contenders? No, but I would say.
No, but think about this though.
Team.
The path to the World Series right now, the Mets have the tougher path than the Yankees do when you're comparing the American League and the National League.
Absolutely.
Now that doesn't mean that the Mets can't get to the World Series and win it next year, because they they lost to the Dodgers in 6 games, but they got to deal with the Dodgers, a healthy Braves team. You got the Phillies. I mean, I don't really count anybody in the NL Central, no offense, but the Padres as well. The Yankees, I mean, look, you got the Orioles you got to deal with, but I still think the Yankees are better than the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Rays. They beat up on the Central. We saw that in the playoffs firsthand. And everybody's like, oh, well, they had the easiest path to the World Series. Well, yeah, they did. But you know what? They went out and did it. What if they lost? Then it's like, oh, they couldn't beat the Guardians and the Royals. And
And
then,
and the band's breaking up in Houston too.
yeah, exactly. So it's right in front of them. It's right in front of them if you make the
Where have we
right
heard that
moves.
before?
Yeah, I know. We've heard that so many times. It's right there. Just make the right moves. And they could very well find themselves back in the same position. Just you don't have Soto.
And I've been saying this all week to people. It's really interesting because while the Yankees and the Mets are spending, the Dodgers aren't going anywhere.
Nope.
I mean, and they might land the Japanese phenom, 23-year-old Roki Sasaki next. It's like we're getting to a point where it's just becoming stupid with the amount of talent that the Dodgers have. Now, Teoscar Hernandez is out on the free agent market right now.
I would take him.
Somebody get Teoscar Hernandez outside of the Dodgers, please. I mean, good God. The fact that this team had Betts, Otani, Freeman, Muncy, I mean, you name
Hey,
it.
Oscar.
Teoscar, everybody in this lineup. This is why this is why we're all so delusional, Kenny. It's like, I had for a second after game 4, I was like, okay, great. Yankees got a game in the World Series. All right, let's see what happens in game 5. And then we know the atrocity that happened after that. But, there's some Yankee fans out there that were just like, oh, yeah, series is back on. We're going to take this back to LA. Let's go 7. We got this. It's like, this team is a juggernaut. The Mets do have the tougher path. The National League, for probably the last, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 seasons, has been a tougher road. It's really interesting how people think that the Mets are just going to instantly jump into World Series conversation. Because, I mean, they should, but we don't really know that because the Dodgers are just getting better. That's why I've been saying this to people all week, that the Yankees are spending, the Mets are spending, the Dodgers are spending and just getting better. They are. I mean, it's crazy to think that this team.
Well, I think the Mets got better with getting Soto, obviously.
Well, they did, but there's just something different about the Dodgers. You know what I'm saying? It just feels like
Well,
they don't care either. They're like, oh, Soto to the Mets, whatever. Let's get Sasaki. Let's re-sign Tommy Edman. And then if they get
Blake Snell,
Blake
Snell,
Snell, yeah,
Blake Snell.
Yeah, and so there's another arm to go into the rotation, which, by the way, the fact that they won a World Series with the amount of damaged arms that they had last year, I mean, you think they're scared? You think they're scared of the Mets right now? I'm sure they're scared of Soto as a player, but they already beat the Mets this year. Trust me, they're not. The Mets are going to have no cakewalk by a long shot in the postseason next year. It's going to be a very grueling road, and that's why I'm really interested to see what this season is going to shape up to be and where everybody lands in free agency, because there are some very important pieces that are going to all of these different teams around the league. And it's just going to get more and more significant with where they land and how it fits in the whole puzzle piece of 2025. Like, this is going to be a fantastic season coming up because, I mean, Mets Dodgers was already kind of drawing a lot of attention last season. This year, it's even more magnified, especially if the Dodgers get Sasaki, because then all of a sudden you're going to have one of the best supposedly new young Japanese pitchers. And that's the other thing, too. The Dodgers are basically becoming a Japanese pipeline with Yamamoto, Otani, Sasaki, and all these great Japanese players are choosing the West Coast teams and the Dodgers because it's closer to home. They also probably know the significance of the Dodgers brand because the Dodgers are right up there with the Yankees in baseball and all these other big powerhouse teams. So they all know what to expect when they're, trying to don that Dodger blue. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but it's going to get really interesting, the whole Mets Dodgers narrative, and it's going to become a rivalry. If it really shapes up like it's supposed to be, it's just going to be power on power in the National League for years to come.
But you also can't forget about the other teams in that division too. You got the Phillies and you got the Braves who had a lot of injuries last year. You got to also factor them in too. And the Padres. The Padres lost Soto and they got better. So it's gonna be very interesting. I did want to bring this up though because I did tease this before we came on. I wanted to throw a little shade at one of our friends who actually I did mention briefly before, who works in the stadium and saw Soto and his family, and that is Don Matassa. So Don Matassa on Friday, I took a screenshot of it just so I have it. On Friday at 8:28 p.m. Now this is before the Mets signed Soto. However, they also did sign another former Yankee, and that was Clay Holmes. So Dommy texted in the chat, "Congrats on Clay Holmes, Mets fans. Mad happy for y'all with you know uh the birthday emoji celebration thing." And when I saw that, I said, "You better hope." Now, I didn't say it to him. I said it to myself. You better hope that Soto does not sign with the Mets because you will look like a clown. And what happened? 2 days later, signs with the Mets. Now,
Oof.
I didn't say anything, but if he's listening, how do you feel now? Now, he tried to walk it back. He said, no, no, Clay Holmes is good. It's just he gives us heart attacks. No, 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 no. You were saying that to clown the Met fans in the chat. And look what happened. Now they have Soto. So how do you feel now? How do you feel now? Maybe you shouldn't have said that. Now, Soto probably still signs with the Mets anyways. No, he does sign with the Mets anyways. But the fact that you said that makes you look like a fool. And I'll say that to your face. So I wanted to bring that up. Sorry, I had to.
Shots
Because
fired, Ken.
that was uncalled for. Okay? Because, you know, there's a lot of Yankee fans in the chat. There's Met fans in the chat. For the most part, everybody's civil. There was maybe one or two times where things got heated. I'll bring up when Lindor had the 3 home runs game, and they thought Wandy was you know blowing a whistle or something. That was when things got heated. All right, because I thought the Mets acted like a bunch of losers. I'll be honest. So I things got heated there, but for the most part, we keep it civil. And you did a nice thing by congratulating them that they got Soto. I didn't do that. Because I'm salty. I'll admit it. But hey, they got the prize, and that was getting him. Now I'm upset with Dami because I think he should have kept his mouth shut and not have said something like that. But he decided to do that, and we got to live with it. So I just wanted to bring that up because I teased that before we got on here. So Soto's press conference is underway. I probably not going to catch it right now because there's still some other things I want to talk about, but I definitely want to tune in at some point and definitely hear what he has to say. But let's talk about the World Series though. All right, because now I sent a voice message after the World Series in the chat, but I wanted to talk about that because obviously we're not doing the radio show anymore, so it's obviously if we were doing it, we would have had our opinions out there already. But yeah, that was tough. That was tough to swallow. Now, I knew going into the series that it was going to be very tough. And I love how we're talking about this in December. This has been over for almost 2 months now. But it was very tough. I knew the series was going to be tough. It was going to be a lot different than playing the Guardians and the Royals. The Guardian series was very entertaining, even though the Yankees won it in 5 games. Most of the games were super competitive, a lot of big home runs. Shout out to Giancarlo Stanton. Really, obviously Juan Soto hit the big home run too, and shout out to him for that. That was an incredible moment. But Giancarlo Stanton, Yankee fans wanted to run him out of town, with the injuries, and they've had enough of him. But every time they get to the postseason, this guy always steps up and has a big moment. This was his best postseason by far with the Yankees. And it's just unfortunate they couldn't win it for him. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up too quickly is that everybody acted like Soto was the sole reason the Yankees got to the World Series. Who won ALCS MVP? Giancarlo Stanton. So, you also got to credit him as well. But back to the World Series, though. Yeah. We were on our trip in Ohio State, at Ohio State, to see Ohio State, Nebraska. So we got to watch game 1 at the Airbnb. And yeah, Freddie Freeman. I see why Met fans don't like Freddie Freeman. Really, after this whole World Series, I see why they don't like Freddie Freeman, because he is a heck of a player. And I understand why the Yankees put in Nestor Cortez, because they liked the matchup. But at the same time, Nestor Cortez hadn't pitched, and Tim Hill has been a reliable reliever throughout the postseason. And it's kind of funny how the following day, Tim Hill pitches against Freddie Freeman. And what happens, Ben? What happens? Tell the audience what happens.
He did it again.
Got it? No. Tim Hill got him out. Tim Hill got him out.
He did. Tim Hill was the option to go to in that situation. That's the decision that's going to forever haunt the Yankees in this World Series, because could you imagine what happens if the Yankees steal that game 1 in Los Angeles? All of a sudden, it becomes a series, because now it's like the Dodgers are going to start to feel that pressure to win game 2. But it's all hypotheticals. We can't.
Yeah. And it's just, and at first when they put in Nestor, I actually didn't necessarily hate the move, but I did also say, is this the right thing to do right now? But
no, see, I was anti-Cortez in that situation, just because I was like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, I would have felt different if.
Well, he actually did get that out before that.
And he did, and it's just that he couldn't get the most important one. And it was just like,
yeah. I know, and it's just Verdugo makes that catch, that incredible catch, almost pulling off a Derek Jeter diving into the stands, and they had to review it just to make sure he caught it. And you thought then you're like, maybe they're gonna steal this one.
And that's the play that everybody forgets. I mean, that's going to be one of the biggest forgotten plays in perhaps World Series history. And a heroic catch by Verdugo.
Yeah, and also, I mean, a couple of other things with that game. I mean, Gleyber Torres almost hit a home run, but there was fan interference, so they ended up not taking the lead in the top of the 9th inning. And then the other thing too, so if you take the lead, I mean, Luke Weaver probably nails it down, and you get the win there. But the other thing too is, we talk about, we just brought up the Nestor Cortez stuff, but I think the bigger issue there was the fact that they were facing the bottom of the order, and you had Jake Cousins on the mound, and he couldn't get the outs. That's what killed them, I think, because then you don't have that at bat with Nestor Cortez. If Jake Cousins is able to get the bottom of the order out, the Yankees walk away with the win there. So, but everybody's going to focus on the Nestor Cortez stuff. But I think it's important to also realize Jake Cousins should have got those outs too. And it didn't happen. And it just, and then game 2 happens. They lose a close game there. And then game 3 at the stadium, they bring out, the Dodgers, they bring out Ice Cube, and then the Yankees, they bring out Fat Joe. I'll be honest, I really didn't know who Fat What was. I might have been. That's how I live under a rock. I had no idea who Fat Joe was. I was like, what am I watching right now? And then the Dodgers win that game, and then game 4 happens, and the Yankees showed you a little bit of a pulse. Volpe hits the grand slam, and they pick up a big win there. Wells hits a home run, who was not good in the postseason. Gleyber Torres had a good postseason. He hit a home run. And then we get to game 5. And look, they got the win in game 4. And I was like you. I was like, all right, picked up a win. Now let's see what happens here. And, Judge hits that home run. And I'm thinking, wow, this game might go back to LA. And then Jazz hits a home run. Then Verdugo gets an RBI single. And then Stanton hits another home run, and they're up 5-0 with Garrett Cole on the mound. And I'm thinking, all right, it's not over yet, but I think this might be going back to LA. And then the 5th inning happens. And when Judge drops that ball in center field, Did not have a good feeling. Now, I was watching this game in my living room, and I thought Garrett Cole was going to pull off a David Robertson like he did in the playoff game against the Twins in 2009 in the division series, where bases loaded, nobody out, and he got out of it. And Garrett Cole was about to get out of it. But I don't know what happened, but Rizzo looked at him. He pointed at Rizzo. Nobody covered first base.
One of the most haunting images.
Yeah.
Ever
And
seen?
have you seen the videos on social media where they edit it so it shows Rizzo covering first base? Have you seen those?
Oh
Because
yes.
they're out there. And let's not forget, before that, this was the least infuriating play, even though it was still infuriating, was Volpe throwing the third base to Jazz, and Jazz had to scoop it, but he ended up mishandling it, and that loaded the bases. I think you look at the Judge drop ball in center field, and obviously nobody covering first base, and then everything just unraveled after that. When Freddie Freeman got the 2-run single to make it 5-3, I immediately went up into my room. I had my Garrett Cole jersey on. I took it off. I I I I threw my hat, my red Yankee hat, and I just sat there on the floor in this room, watching the Teoscar Hernandez at bat. And then once he hit that double, that was it was one of those moments. That was one of the most pissed off. That was the most pissed off I had been in a very long time. There was a lot of expletives. I was not happy. I was because of just what we just witnessed. And I didn't even care that they took the lead after that, because if you got to remember, the Yankees actually went ahead at one point, but it didn't matter. It was one run. The Dodgers were going to come back and take the lead, and that's what happened. And they ended up losing the game, and everybody, is up in arms about Aaron Judge, but now everybody loves Aaron Judge again because he didn't leave the Yankees. Juan Soto did. So, that's the Yankee fan base. They love you one day, they hate you the next day, then they love you again. Listen, I love Aaron Judge. We're so fortunate that Aaron Judge is a Yankee. I mean, he's got to catch that ball. And he had a disappointing postseason. And I'm more upset because I thought when he hit that home run in the first inning, I thought that was going to change everything. I thought, here we go. He's going to be locked in for the rest of this series. Even if we don't win it, he's going to be locked in. He's going to be a threat, and we're a different team now. But then it just all went away when he dropped that ball in the outfield, and I'm upset. I'm upset because I don't want this to hang over him, because that's all it's going to be now. Because even with him winning the MVP, which he rightfully deserved, you still got people saying, "Oh, well, he didn't do anything in the postseason. Oh, he dropped the ball in center field." That is going to hang over him until he comes through in the postseason, whether it's next year, whatever. We got to hope it's next year, but he's got to come up big in the postseason one of these years to let this go away. Because right now, this is going to follow him for the rest of his career. But overall, with this World Series, though, it was very disappointing. That fifth inning was, I guess, our version of the Yankees collapsing against the Red Sox, even though it wasn't 3 games, it was one inning. It's something that we're never going to forget. You're up 5-0 with Garrett Cole on the mound. And also, shout out to Garrett Cole, because Garrett Cole was awesome in the postseason as well. And the Yankees, unfortunately, lost 2 games in the World Series that he started that they could have won. And maybe, this series does go back to LA. But again, we're dealing in hypotheticals. It didn't happen. Even with what happened in the fifth inning, Garrett Cole still gave us 7 innings. And, it was definitely tough it was a tough pill to swallow. There were a lot of guys on the team that I wanted us to win with, like obviously Soto, of course, because we didn't know if we were going to keep him. But I mean, Gleyber Torres is not coming back. I know Verdugo had a tough year, but I did like him though. Rizzo, of course, I loved when we got him, but that concussion kind of derailed his career. There were a lot of guys on this team I wanted to win with. I wanted to win with this core, and we still got most of the guys for next year. We still got Big G, we still got Judge, we got Volpe, Wells, we got Jazz for a full season. I think he's going to have a big year. Dominguez, I hope he takes a big step forward. But I'm going to miss a lot of the guys that we had on this team. And it was very tough, especially because of the high that we were on after they got to the World Series, after beating the Guardians. But ultimately, the Dodgers are a better team. And if anybody thought that the Yankees were going to, cakewalk the Dodgers, did not realize how good the Dodgers were because, you talked about them a little bit today. I mean, that team is unbelievable. From top to bottom, that lineup, I mean, yeah, you get to the bottom. Well, then again, we didn't get the bottom of the order out in game one, but they have a very good team. And we can complain all we want about, how they're handling some of the contracts, but I mean, they are a heck of a team. And it was going to take the Yankees to play their A game. Actually, no, more than just their A game. They had to play A plus 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 game to beat the Dodgers. And they didn't do that because that fifth inning was a microcosm of the season. Bad defense. And they're hoping to correct that this offseason. And the base running too, like those things didn't impact us the first two series against the Guardians and the Royals. I was at game one against the Royals when they mishandled a double play, but it didn't really affect us. When we got to the World Series, when we made mistakes, the Dodgers capitalized on it. And we can't be surprised by the outcome. Now, I do think had, we just did the simple things by catching a ball and covering first base, then the Yankees probably win that game. But they didn't. The Dodgers were the better team. They deserved it. And look, the Yankees lost Juan Soto. That's what we started off with. They got to go out. And now they address the pitching staff. I think the rotation is going to be really good if everything pans out. The bullpen is always good. It's about fixing this lineup and fixing the defense. And if they could do that, they're going to be in a good spot next year. But yeah, no, it really, the World Series was tough. It was tough. It's something that is going to sting for a long time. It still stings, and we're still talking about it. But that's just because I wanted to. But yeah, said a lot. What are your thoughts on the World Series?
Very well said, and don't really have much to dispute there. I mean, just the fact that the Yankees lost those two games that Cole started, like you mentioned, that really hurt. That really hurt because you knew, with Rodon starting, Rodon was a little bit of a mixed bag in 2024. You didn't know exactly what you were going to get from him every time that he stepped onto the mound. And the fact that Freddie Freeman became the newest villain, in Yankee postseason history to just completely dominate. He had a homer in every game except what, game 5, I think it was, or he had a homer in 4 of the 5 games at least in the series.
Yeah.
And
what is it? He homered in like 6 straight World Series games.
Yes,
right.
Dating back to
with the Braves.
With the Braves in 2021, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over the Astros. And the thing too about game 1 that was very eerie too is that when Freeman hit that walk-off grand slam, it felt just like Kirk Gibson in 1988. It really did. Because that's the thing about Freddie Freeman that most people didn't understand. The fact that he performed that well in that series practically on one ankle, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, I think it got better as the series went on.
It did. I mean, he
missed a couple of games, or he missed one game against the Mets.
He did, and he was getting intense therapy. He was showing up at the ballpark like 6-7 hours before games just to get an hour plus of therapy from the Dodgers training staff. And I mean, the fact that the Yankees played that bad though in the game 5, and that's where it's gonna haunt them. I mean, not only the Cortez decision, but that moment specifically, because like you said, just by the way that the Judge came out with the homer, and it felt like the tone setter. We always talk about, and a lot of national sports media talks about having a tone setter in baseball. It's absolutely true, because if your stars finally show a sign of life, you expect the rest of the team to respond in a positive way. And obviously game 4, that happened when the Yankees finally bursted out of their offensive stall to put up 11 runs in the game 4 win. And then all of a sudden, just when you think things are getting good in game 5, because everybody, at least I was thinking, it's like, well, the Mets did the same thing to Jack Flaherty in game 5 of the NLCS. They defended home field. They came out and they killed him. and they forced a game 6 back in LA. And that's exactly what I was thinking going into that night with the Yankees. I was like, they're going to defend Yankee Stadium. They're not going to let the Dodgers win this thing here. Flaherty's vulnerable. We've seen it before. This feels just like deja vu. And for 4 innings, it did. And then all of a sudden, you see, to really put it frank, little league mistakes happen defensively. It just can't. And you said the Dodgers capitalized on those mistakes. And not only did they do that, but that's what great teams do. I'm not saying the Yankees weren't a great team, but great teams find the loopholes and they find the avenues that they can go through to try and win games and high leverage games like the World Series. The Dodgers, we knew they were no joke. And no disrespect in any way to the Royals or the Guardians. But the Yankees certainly had the, I guess if you could say, more direct path because they found the ways to get around those teams with strong outings from Cole. Stanton just absolutely killing it the entire postseason. And here's another point with Stanton, by the way. This is where Judge has to really come into the fold now in October because Stanton is getting older. He's 35, going to be 36 by the end of next season. He's not going to keep up this postseason production forever. It's not going to happen. I mean, it's been unbelievable to see how he breaks out of his shell in October. And everybody talks about how he expands the zone all season long. And, you know, he has a golden sombrero or two from time to time.
Yeah, but you know what? He could be going through the motions, you know? And then when it's the postseason, he just locks in.
And maybe it's because, again, I've said it before, some players can't do it under the pressure that the postseason entails, but there's also other guys like Stanton who realize the importance and the significance of winning a championship in any sport, and they show up when the lights are the brightest. And that's the interesting role reversal, is that Judge performs so well throughout the entire course of a season, and Stanton is always relatively consistent, but then he just explodes when when it matters most.
Well, also he spent some time on the IL too.
Right, and he was a little banged up this past season, and that's the other thing too, is that Stanton finally, like, all the talk going into last season, because don't you remember in spring training, like how everyone kept saying that he looked rejuvenated, he looked re-energized, lost that beat, and he came.
Yeah, he had that 3-homer game in one of the spring training games. I think against the Pirates. I forget, but still, he had a 3-homer game.
Yep. And then it was just all encapsulated throughout the season, and then he had the spectacular postseason that helped the Yankees get to the World Series, and that's why it's like, sure, Soto had the moment in terms of hitting that home run that took the Yankees to the World Series, but when you look at it from a big lens, Stanton was the guy in October, and that's why now.
And he had 2 more home runs in the World Series too. One of them gave the Yankees the lead in Game 1.
Right, and that shot was unbelievable down the left field line, just to the right of the foul pole. And now Aaron Judge has more of a magnifying glass on him once again. He does, because especially if the Yankees put up the season that they are still capable of putting up in 2025, now this is Judge's, what would this be? Would this be his 5th postseason with the Yankees coming up? 6th?
Let's see, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 22, 24. Yeah, no, this would be. Yeah, so 7 postseasons.
Okay, so he has.
They didn't make it in 20. Yeah, they didn't make it in 23, obviously.
Yeah, but now though, with no Soto on this roster, it's going to be a bit of scrutiny next season if Judge can't.
Oh yeah, no, he's going to hear it more if he doesn't deliver. Yeah.
It's really strange. It's like,
I mean, maybe not from me, but I mean internally, yes. But I'm not going to be on social media,
no,
bashing him, because.
And that's the other thing.
That's not what I'm about when it comes to him.
And with Yankee fans too, I said earlier in the show, it's all about heat of the moment with fans. The Yankee fans, especially the extreme Yankee fans, are even more that. They're even more because anytime there's just the tiniest things that are going wrong with this team, everybody calls up the talk shows and it's like, oh, cancel the season. This team can't hit. They can't pitch.
Oh my
Fire.
God, this team lost 2 games in a row.
I know. It's all the time with this team, Kenny, and that's why. Look, at the end of the day, if we're really looking at it, it's like the World Series was painful. This one's going to be painful to overcome, but you have to turn the page. It's a new season coming up in, if you can believe it, not even 2.5 months now till pitchers and catchers report. And now you're taking on a new season with no Juan Soto, but you add a crucial arm to your pitching staff. And hopefully there's more on the way this offseason, as Hal and Cash have reportedly, said that they want to still be that contender this year. And I think they will be. But big picture, you move on, and it feels like it's a bit of a new start now. Does it feel in some ways that the window might be closing for the Yankees to win a championship? I guess you could say maybe perhaps, because they definitely are getting older, I think, when you look at the entire roster. But this team is going to be a little bit new. Like you said, a lot of the core is back, but there are going to be some new pieces, and that's why it's going to be really interesting to watch what this team can be capable of here in 2025.
Yeah, no, I agree. If they do this right, they could find themselves right back in the same position they were in this past season and back in the World Series. But I mean, right now you look at it, the Dodgers are the favorites, and it's not close.
They are.
So
They are.
Now, if they got Soto, what's the point of even watching baseball?
Plus 370 at FanDuel, the Dodgers are to win the World Series and repeat. That's pretty impressive in terms of baseball odds.
Yeah, no, it's just, and they got better, and they're still going to add pieces. So, but I think that pretty much covered everything we wanted to talk about. Any last remarks before we sign off here?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say that I guess one final closing message to, the Yankee fan base. It's like, it's going to be okay, guys. It is. I mean, everybody's still,
people are tuning out right now as you're saying that.
I'm sure they are. But look, some people think the sky is falling. It's really not. It's like in the first 24 hours, it felt like it. That's how I was feeling. And then now after the Fried signing and more, there's a little more optimism, I guess, in some ways that, this is another important piece that this roster needed. But it does sting. I mean, it's going to sting, especially if Soto. This is the other thing. If Soto and the Mets win a title next year, the Yankees don't, it's going to add to the pain. It is. Because then
if it's against the Yankees.
Oh, now that would be the chaos scenario.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to leave this room.
I wouldn't feel good about that at all. I would struggle to accept that one, especially because there's a lot of Mets fans out there that I know, especially now at, my new job. And they would hang it over my head, that's for sure. And it would hang over the Yankees' heads as well, because then it would feel like, wow, we lost to the guy that went across the city. But look,
think about this though, as my camera for some reason just decides not to work for a second. So the Mets, they swept the Yankees last year, right? And that was with Soto.
Yep.
Now the Mets have Soto. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, and it's 3-3 this year now too. So now we get six renditions of this Subway Series, and then
I know, that's how it should be. That's how it always was. That's how it should be.
And then will we get 6 more in October? Maybe.
Only time will tell. Only time will tell.
No.
But yeah. So like I said at the very beginning, 2 straight weeks of episodes here, and like I said, we're gonna continue to try to make this a weekly thing. If you want to listen to this as well as the other episode from last week. It's up on Spotify, and other podcasts and whatnot, wherever you get your podcasts for the most part. So make sure to go check that out. As my camera is not cooperating still. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in today. We'll hopefully be back next week with another episode. So as always, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off along with Ben Upson. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
So long.